What's up everyone, Pete Gallia here. Thanks so much for checking out this week's video, and I'm back in the Netherlands again, as you can see. This week coming at you with a lot less hair than usual. But worry not, it shouldn't affect my ability to play the drums, and we should be alright. So, today's topic is all about clave once again. Last week's video was also related to clave, so if you haven't checked that out, I highly suggest you do, and come back to this one later. Now, this week we're going to be dealing with the Son Clave and 6 different rudimental exercises I've kind of created to present to you today that you can use within this rhythm, and it's a lot of fun. It'll get a bunch of different rudiments working for you, and I think you're going to like it. So today we're going to be using Son Clave, and last week we were using Rumba Clave. We were using a 3-2 Rumba Clave. This week we're using a 2-3 Son Clave. So the difference is 3-2, 2-3. It's just the opposite, you know, there's one bar with 3 notes in it, one bar with 2 notes in it, and it can be either way. You can have different orientations of the clave. And in this case, we're using Son Clave rather than Rumba Clave. And the difference is only one note. And this particular note is the last one in the 3 bar. So in the Rumba Clave, as I mentioned in last week's video, the last note in the 3 bar is on the 4 and. So the last upbeat of that bar. But in this case, we're going to move that, shift it back, and put it on beat 4. So that's the difference between Rumba Clave and Son Clave. So, first and foremost, really quick, let's get comfortable with the clave itself. So once again, we're counting in cut time, and the first bar of the 2-3 clave, we've got 2 notes, of course, because it's the 2 bar, and they happen to fall on the 2 and the 3. And then the second bar, we've got notes on the 1, the 2 and the 4. So, counting in cut time, the shape of the clave feels a little bit like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Sweet. So that's the clave basically. Now for the first exercise, gonna need these, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep the clave in place as our accents, and we're gonna put 8th notes happening all throughout, and anywhere we're playing an 8th note that isn't on the clave is going to be a ghost note, and on the clave we're gonna play it as an accent. Now, just to make it clear, for the rest of this lesson, all of the notation you see is all 1-line snare drum stuff. Any note that's above the line is played with your right hand. Any note that's below the line, played with your left hand. And small note heads are ghost notes, big note heads are accents. So let me play the first exercise for you now. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this first exercise is pretty straightforward. There's not too much to get confused about in it, but there is a thing or two I really want to mention with regards the choreography of the hands and the wrist movements that you need to actually pull out these accents from your drum or from your pad. So essentially, without making this a super in-depth lesson on technique, the few things you need to keep in mind are anytime you're going to play an accent, remember an accent happens because the stick is higher up. It doesn't happen because we hit the drum harder. So if you need an accent to happen, then you need to kind of preempt it and make sure that your hand is raised before you need to play the accent. In other words, let's say you have an accent on the right hand, I mean, as you do in the beginning of this exercise, it starts 1 and 2. That first note I play with the right hand is gonna be an upstroke, 1 and 2. Okay? And it prepares you to come and play that accent. Now, in the case of the first accent, we want it to be a full stroke because it's followed by another accent on the right hand side. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So in that case, the first one will be a full stroke to come back up. The second one will be a downstroke to play an accent, ready to play another ghost note afterwards. Now that ghost note we play after, which is on beat 4, is actually going to be an upstroke because we have another accent on beat 1 in the next bar. So the choreography of the hands that corresponds to this accenting pattern is as such. Let's check it out slowly. So we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and once more 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I'm ready again down here to start once more 1 and 2, etc. Now it goes without saying, of course, that all the exercises in this lesson should be practiced on both sides, except for the last one because that alternates naturally, but in general you do want to practice things on both sides to keep your hands equal. As Don Famolaro says, you know, why have a weak hand and a strong hand when you can just have two strong hands, right? So remember, when you're approaching the choreography of these exercises, make sure anytime you need to accent with whichever side that you're preempting it by playing an upstroke on the previous note with that same hand, and that any accent followed by an accent is a full stroke, any accent followed by a ghost note or an upstroke will be a downstroke. Quick note, when you play a downstroke, you can see my stick does a little bit of a wiggle at the end after I play the downstroke. You do want that to happen because if it doesn't, that energy has to go somewhere. You don't want to be squeezing the stick too hard because you're gonna break your stick, you're gonna hurt your hand, you're gonna break your drum head or your pad or something. Allow the energy to go where it needs to go. And later on, when you're getting faster, playing that accent and having that little wiggle with the stick will benefit you because it will become the next unaccented note, or you allow the stick once again to come up to play two accents in a row. Final note, make sure the one and in the second bar, which is played with the left hand, is an upstroke because you've got an accent happening on the two and there. So we play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Fantastic! That's the first exercise, pretty self-explanatory. You know, get busy with that first and then of course move on to the next ones once you're comfortable. Next exercise. What we're gonna do is retain the exact same kind of structure. It's still with the same choreography pretty much, but we're going to double the unaccented notes. So our ghost notes now are going to be double strokes. Let's check that out now. Okay, in the case of this exercise, it's gonna help you with your 3-stroke drags or roughs, depending how you want to call them. It's gonna help you with your 5-stroke rolls. And it's also going to help you with your 7-stroke rolls. Thank you, outside driver, for disrupting my 7-stroke roll. So, same kind of deal as before, and you're also going to be lifting on the same parts of the bars like I showed you. This time, you're just going to change this to this. So it might be a good idea to get your unaccented double stroke rolls going and then bring in the accents once you're comfortable. Remembering to lift before each accent with the back of the wrist, kind of like a puppet. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you've got that, maybe put them back to back, like so. And there you have it. That's the first 2 exercises of today. Now moving on to the next exercise, we're going to start introducing some flams a little bit, which is always a lot of fun. I really love playing flams. And we're going to get rid of the double stroke rolls for the time being and go back to the basic pattern which we started with, but we're going to flam those accented notes now. And it sounds a little bit like this. Now, when you're dealing with flams, it's important that you understand the starting position of a flam, which is one stick higher than the other. Now, it might not be quite as exaggerated as this in your performances, but during your practice time, I do encourage you to make this as obvious to yourself as possible to remind your body of this important aspect of playing flams. And why is it that important? I think it's important because, first of all, volume difference. If you've got a stick a lot closer to the pad, you're going to get a quieter note, and one a lot higher is going to get you a louder note. Makes sense? Second of all, when you drop them and you use the rebound to come back up, you're going to hit the pad at different times, which is essentially what we want to do with a flam. A flam is embellishing a note, not necessarily an accent. Flams don't have to be accented, but embellishing a note with a smaller grace note right before it, like so. I recommend practicing them on one side and then on the other. And generally, if you can practice them alternating, it's gonna be a huge help as well. Maybe I'll make a video specifically about that at some point. But just to show you briefly now, this is kind of what it will look and sound like. And as my mentor, the great Massimo De Maio, always told me for many years now, make them dance, make those flams dance, okay? I love that piece of advice. So once you want to put the exercise together with the flams, again, same choreography, pretty much the same movements, you're just allowing whichever hand is lower in terms of the position of your hands right before an accent, the lower hand you're also going to drop into the pad or snare or whatever it is you're playing to give you the grace note to play a flam. So this is kind of the structure of the exercise now. Check it out. In general, I think, practicing patterns with single strokes and being able to play flams on any of those positions is always a really good option to practice and something that's going to help your playing and open up your playing a lot. In this case, we're just using it in a sort of reading text style with the Son Clave. So this is going to allow you to practice it on both hands, especially if you flip the pattern around and start with the left hand. So a really cool one, I think. Okay, so for the next challenge, if you've kept up so far and you want to take it a step further, what I did in this case was I added cheese to the flams. Now, what is cheese, you ask? Good question. So this is something that actually you don't see. These engines, man, people need to drive quieter. So this is something that I didn't even know existed for a long time until the past couple of years, seeing these drum corps marching guys on Instagram playing these crazy sort of patterns with flams. And I understand that cheese is something used a lot in the drum corps world. Maybe it's even coming from there. But again, it's just a cool thing to use, so let's incorporate it into these exercises now. So what a cheese essentially is adding a second stroke to your flam to make it a double. So from this, it becomes this. So on your flams, you're allowing that stick, the stick which is playing the note falling from higher, in this case it is accented, you're allowing it to rebound and give you a second note before you come back up, or stay down if you need to play a ghost note after. So in the case of this exercise, it would look something a little bit like this. I'm going to try play it really slowly so I can be as clear as possible. Check it out. Now a little faster. So it's a really cool way to add just a little bit of texture to whatever you're playing. In general, you can just take any flammed pattern you know and add cheese to it, and suddenly it's a whole new challenge. It's quite challenging, in my opinion, to stay relaxed when getting that double stroke and not forcing it out of the stick. And it definitely adds a new layer to what you're doing. Here's the pattern once again. And just like we put the first and second exercises back to back, let's do the same with the third and fourth now. Happy days. Now for the penultimate exercise of today, we're switching gears and we're moving into 8th note triplets. So the feel and the vibe of it is going to be a fair bit different now, but the outlining of the pattern is kind of going to be the same really. The downbeats remain accented on the downbeats, and the upbeats this time are going to move to the third triplet of each beat. Now this may remind you of a lot of things we see online these days, a lot of like, oh, check this lick out kind of videos, where people are using a lot of expanded 6-stroke rolls and permutations thereof to create vocabulary around the kit, which is a really cool way of exploring your voice on the drum kit. And this is kind of similar to that really, but again we're going in the sort of reading text vibe using this Son Clave. So let me play the pattern for you really slowly now and try and just observe what hand is playing which notes, and let's start from there. That's the basic pattern. So To kind of break down the movements and the choreography of the hands, essentially what's happening is we've got tap, up, tap, full tap, tap, down, tap, 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 up, tap, and that's the first bar. And the second bar starts out with that same expanded 6-stroke roll kind of thing. Down, tap, up, tap, tap, down. And the second portion of that bar is up, tap, tap, down, tap, tap. Now bear in mind there are other possible stickings for playing this pattern accented throughout an 8th note triplet context, but I just chose this one because it's what my hands did naturally and just wanted to pick one really. So here's the choreography once more. And fun fact in there, in the second bar, you've got a little 5-note sticking, which I like to use a lot when I'm studying 5s. It's kind of like an expanded 5-stroke roll, I guess, which is right, left, left, right, right. And then it continues with a paradiddle on the left-hand side. Left, right, left, left, and then ta, ki, ta at the end to round it off. So once more, the pattern. And we've also done it in triplets. Nice. And last but not least, the big kahuna exercise for today and the main inspiration for me to put these exercises together for you is playing this same Son Clave rhythm outlined through a 16th note context. So this is really gonna push your double strokes, your paradiddles, and your paradiddle-diddles. So let me play the pattern. Let me play the pattern for you now, a little bit slower than before. So as I mentioned before, it's really going to help you work on your doubles, your paradiddles, and your paradiddle-diddles. For example, if we're going to be playing these double strokes and we need to accent beat 2, that gives us a sort of 5-stroke roll vibe. 1E and a 2. Now, that same 5-stroke roll is going to continue into a paradiddle so that we can accent on beat 3 also. So, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. Okay, the next accent of course comes on the 1, which means from beat 3 of the first bar onwards, we're playing a sort of paradiddle-diddle-diddle. So it's a paradiddle with 2 extra sets of double strokes at the end. So we've got 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a paradiddle-diddle-diddle. And remember, you need to lift with the right hand coming out of that pattern to be able to accent beat 1 of the next bar. So once more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And the second bar, I think, is a little bit more straightforward. It's just a paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle, which is a nice exercise to practice on its own for sure. If you want to just break it down and do something a little bit simpler, separate it into chunks and then bring it back into context later, feel free. In that case, if we had to isolate this bar and do it repetitively, it is going to alternate sides, and it's going to be a little bit like this. Check it out. Paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-pa. So when we play that paradiddle-diddle, we're gonna lift on the second note of that first double within the paradiddle-diddle. So it's gonna be paradiddle-diddle. And I'm ready to accent the next paradiddle again. So paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle. And then you can practice it also on the left side, alternating. So paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-pa. Now, to get back to the context of the Son Clave exercise, at the end, you do not want to lift on the ra of the last paradiddle like we did now, because the pattern starts on the other side, it's true, but it's going to start unaccented. So the choreography of that second bar is going to be paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle. With a downstroke on that last accent, and then just tap strokes, because we're going to start again on the left side now, which is what I really love about this pattern itself, is that it alternates. I really enjoy practicing things that alternate naturally. I don't know if it's because it means I don't technically have to study things on both sides, but it's good to do so anyway. Whatever, it's just nice when it alternates naturally, because you have more phrasing options and it can be a lot more fun when you apply it to the drum set. Okay, so now let's look at the pattern, the 2 bars. We've got 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... Ready to go on the left again. So. Let's look at it briefly on the left side. So we've got 1E and a 2. So remember, on that first double stroke, you're gonna lift on the second note because you have to prepare for the downbeat, which is accented on beat 2. So we've got 1E and a. Now from here we've got a simple paradiddle, 2E and a, which lands us on the other side in this position. Again, remember, I'm exaggerating movements. Maybe don't aim to play your accents this big unless you're gonna play really slow. And finish off that first bar with your 3E and a 4E and a, which is your paradiddle-diddle-diddle, and we lifted on that note with the left hand, so we're ready to accent on beat 1. And by that note, I meant the 4E, of course. And then we finish off the pattern once again with our paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle-diddle, paradiddle, and we're ready to go on the right side again. So here's the pattern nice and slowly in full. And there you have it. Maybe a little bit faster now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, my lovely friend on the other side of the internet, there's 6 exercises for you which took the 2-3 Son Clave and used it in a sort of reading text format where we applied different concepts to be able to extract different rudimental patterns and rhythms to use later on the drum set. Of course, being really attentive to detail and making sure the choreography works where it needs to and your wrists are doing what they need to do to facilitate the quieter and louder notes wherever they need to be is definitely a really good idea, because that's the foundation of efficient technique, really. You want to get as much out of your technique as possible with the least amount of effort. Later on, I think it's a good idea if you then apply it to your drums, you know, move the accents around the kit, move the flams and the cheeses around, make it your own, have fun and see what happens. Alright, I guess that's it from me for today. Thanks once again for tuning into my channel this week. Remember, I'm posting every week on Monday, and I'm doing all sorts of different videos, all related to rhythm. Different asalaton, kashaka videos, practice pad videos, whatever comes to mind. So if you've got any requests or any ideas for future content related to rhythm that you'd like to see me breaking down and explaining, please let me know. Throw a comment down below, let's be in touch. I want to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please subscribe and like and all of that stuff you're used to hearing too much, but maybe it will grow a nice little community of rhythm nerds here on the internet, with YouTube as our home. Okay, my fellow rhythm nerd friends, thanks for sticking through this video with me. I hope you have a fantastic week. I'll see you in next week's video. Happy practicing. Peace.